Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have an early impression on a fragrance that used to be a Fragcom darling. This was a hype beast back in the day, and it's from the house of Rania J. And you know, anytime multiple people send me a sample of the same fragrance that I have not talked about on the channel, I know it's basically time to do a video. Hint it, you know, the hint, I got the hint basically. And so one of my perfume god people sent me a sample of Ambre Loup, and then a second one came in, and you can see I've pretty much given these. I've given it some very good testing over the last few months, and I actually plan on doing a live stream where we sample the remaining 6 samples from the Rania J sample set. I think Shiva sent me this sample set. Wherever you are, I hope you're well, Shiva. So shout outs to you. But I actually have a video on a fragrance called Oud Assam. And I did a video on that. You can go check it out. I'll add this to the Rania J playlist once this video is completed today. But Ambre Loup, there's a lot of videos out there. Pretty much all of the main reviewers that you can think of have done a video on this. This was, actually, if you picked one from the Rania J line that got hyped in Fragcom the most, this is it. And then maybe Oud Assam, and then maybe like Habanero and Queer Andalou and stuff like that. So it is the middle of March here in Texas, although it's still relatively moderate weather. Most people say this is a complete winter fragrance only. I disagree, but I'm getting to the point now where I can wear more and more things in different weathers, and it really doesn't bother me. It's probably more traditionally winter, but you know, I'm wearing it in the middle of March, and I don't feel out of place at all. So let's talk about this fragrance and what it's all about. So the House of Rania J is a house that actually doesn't get much talk on my channel, you know, because I have 0 bottles from the house, although obviously they're about to get some talk because we're going to go through the entire sample set very soon. But it's a house that when I tried Oud Assam, I understood why people kind of hyped it because, you know, when it came out back in a decade ago or whenever it came out, you know, it really felt like the oud was original and unique. However, for the time that we're in today, 2022 when I tested Oud Assam, 2023 now when I'm making this video, Oud Assam just still kind of felt like it was a step down from what you could get from houses like Bortnikov, Areej, Doir, Ensar. And, you know, that's can't take anything away from Rania J for creating a fragrance back then. I think when it came out, it was probably revolutionary. And had I smelled it back then, I probably would have instantly ran and bought a bottle. But I decided today there's no need to go out and buy Oud Assam. So how do I feel about Ambre Loup? So the first thing I'm going to tell you is, again, there is a ton of information on this out there. And I think for the most part, all of it's pretty much true. It's spot on. I've listened to some people. I've listened to a couple videos before I did this video, which I normally don't do. I was just kind of interested to see if there were big variations. And honestly, most people say the same thing. Even a week ago, probably the person that I would trust the most, Robes08, Mark from the Robes08 channel, just uploaded his video on Ambre Loup 6 days ago, actually, not even a week ago. And he said a lot of the same things that some of the other people were saying, and I completely agree with everything that he said. Between his video and now my video, I think you'll have a pretty good breakdown on the fragrance, because Robes and I are really, it feels like a few of the only people left who are just willing to just upload these videos off of samples that were not sponsored by the brand or anything like that. It's just an easy way to kind of put our thoughts out there. And he calls it taking a test drive, I think. And I call this series an early impression, just because it's not truly a first impression, because I've sprayed it before. I'm wearing it as my scent of the day. I've had it on my skin for about 10 hours today, so I'm a little late to doing this video just because today has been just a crazy day at work. Work was absolutely brutal, and I was just swamped all day. I couldn't knock this video out. So it's late in the day, but I've given it a full wear. And so here's kind of my thoughts. So with Ambre Loup, it opens up in the realm of a spicy amber. So if you think of something like Ambre Sultan, which is my favorite amber of all time, I think it's a masterpiece amber, and thanks to my very kind benefactor from Serge Sultan, I now have a backup of this. And if you think of something like maybe Dior's Mitzah, you'll kind of get into the ballpark, okay, of Ambre Loup. It's a spicy amber opening. However, there is a twist, because there are some animalic components lurking in the background. And I heard Mark from the Robes 08 channel say he wasn't sure where those animalics were coming from. And I'll have to agree with him in that I'm not sure. However, I have a hypothesis here. And so the very first time I smelled this, I like to smell my fragrances blind. So I like to smell it, and obviously I knew what it was because it says it on the thing. But I don't like to look at the note listing. I just like to spray and smell and start making notes right away. And the very first thing that I thought of is oud. This has to have an oud note in there. And there's this touch of this lurking, stalking, animalic oud is kind of what it feels like. But it's tamed by this amber, okay? So imagine that you're smelling something that easily could be a fierce oud, but it's kind of in the background a little bit. You're looking out into the forest, and maybe behind a tree, you see the predator stalking, lurking. You know that they could be dangerous, but they're far away, right? That's kind of the feeling of this oud. It is, especially the first time that it kind of hits your nose after you've been wearing it all day. And I do reapply my fragrances, so I have done a reapplication. But especially the very first thing in the morning, like before work starts, 7 in the morning, and you hit yourself with that first spray, and it's the very first thing that your nose smells that day. The oud feels much more front and center, okay? I would almost call this an amber oud fragrance. You know how chocolate ouds have become popular, rose ouds have become popular? This almost feels like a true amber oud to me. Like the oud is a much bigger player than I think it really gets led on that it is. Because I think it kind of makes up this trinity of woods. There's Gaiac wood, there's cedar wood, and then there's oud. And they kind of work together to form this foundation. It's not overdone or anything like that. I don't think it's overdone. It is just a very noticeable, especially in the first 30 to 45 minutes, I think. First 30 or 45 minutes, the fragrance feels like it's that predator animalic, slightly, I don't want to say sharp, but you could tell the predator in the distance has claws, okay? Maybe that's a corny analogy, but that's kind of the way I see this. Like, it could be dangerous, but it's far away. It's kind of tamed. It's tamed by that amber. And so here's what the website says, just out of kind of curiosity. Just let me read you what the Rania J website has to say about Ambre Loup. It says, Ambre Loup starts with a gourmand and animalic note. So she says it starts with a gourmand and animalic note. And again, there's about 20 videos of this online from the main big YouTube reviewers. And Sebastian from the Perfume Guy channel is one of those. He did a video on this like 6 or 7 years ago, a long time ago. And he said that he feels there's a gourmand quality to this. I did not get that. I did not get that gourmand quality. It just never hit me to view this kind of as a gourmand type fragrance, if that makes sense. So if you go to their website and you read gourmand, you're like, nope, not for me. It's not super sweet. I'll tell you that right now. If anything, maybe it's like an embellished gourmand. You can see the outlines of a gourmand beginning to form, and then the bubble gets popped, and that's pretty much it. It says the Peru balsam and labdanum appear with dry and rugged woods. I'll agree with that. I'll definitely agree with the dry and rugged woods. I love dry fragrances, and this is not very sweet. For a fragrance that's amber, you have to remember that amber is an accord that the perfumers make. There's no amber that they can just drop into the fragrance and bam, you have an amber. It's an accord, and usually it's made up of things like labdanum and resins and vanilla and Peru balsam and Tolu balsam and all this other stuff that the perfumers use. Here, I think Rania J used oud as well. And that oud hit my nose from the very second, before I even knew the note listing. I think it was the first thing that hit my nose, more so than even the amber, okay? And then it says, as well as resinous notes that are perfectly intertwined with vanilla and tonka bean, a unique amber scent. And that's it. That's all she says about it, interestingly enough. And the price is 50 mils is 150 euros. 100 mils is 250 euros. So I'm not sure what the calculation to dollars would be. It's gone up a little bit. I saw some of the prices on the older videos. I think when Sebastian did his video, it was like 105, 105 euros. And then, you know, when Zhao Jolima did his videos, like 120 or something. And so it's slowly kind of crept up a little bit, which is fair. It's not a huge price increase, though, to her credit. Some of the brands have just skyrocketed in price. For a fragrance of this quality, the price is very fair, I think. Yeah, the price is very fair. I mean, she could easily ask more for this with how expensive, you know, fragrances have become, in my opinion. And so, this is kind of the point. Let's say you get past this first opening where the oud really plays a bigger role in the fragrance, and you make it to that 45-minute mark. And don't forget, it's extremely spicy. So you get a lot of spices. You're going to get things that feel like you're smelling nutmeg. And you're going to get a spice blend. Almost like, you know how Ambre Sultan smells? I've said it before, but Ambre Sultan smells like you're like opening up grandma's spice cupboard. And you're not just smelling the spices that grandma had in there, but you're smelling the spices that have almost embedded themselves into the wood of the cabinet, because grandma's, of course, lived in the same house for 50 years, right? And the spices have almost like become one with the cabinet, you know, because they've been in there for so long and closed for so long. They've like macerated in the cabinet, you know? There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of this spicy feel, but it blends beautifully with the oud. It really blends beautifully. And I think the point where most people really would start to enjoy the scent more, because for fragrance enthusiasts, I don't think this is a challenging fragrance at all. Like I said, the predator's far away in the woods behind the tree. Maybe you see him peeking out, but the danger is far away. But for the average person to smell this, I think they very well may smell this and go, ooh, no, I can't. That's way too challenging for me. No way, no way. However, I think if you wait about 30 to 45 minutes, this calms down beautifully. And it really does. Her description on the website of a unique amber scent, beautifully intertwined is the word she used. I could completely see that, because it really starts to calm down after 30 to 45 minutes. The oud almost goes from, I can't really call it a main player, because I think it's really supposed to be a background player. Like I said, it's supposed to be kind of something in the background, but I spotted it instantly. And, you know, but 30 to 45 minutes in, I think it kind of takes its leave a little bit and really lets the amber and the resins and the Tolu balsam, the Peru balsam kind of really take over. And, you know, these balsams and resins, you're going to get little hints here and there of things. So you'll get vanilla, you will get cinnamon, you're going to get this earthy bitterness to it, and spicy labdanum. And I think that's what I really like about this fragrance. Is this is the point in the fragrance where, to me, it feels so well blended that in my head, I started to think that this should be called Ambre Soup instead of Ambre Loup, because it really does turn into this 30 to 45 minutes in, it becomes so smooth and well blended. And, you know, just imagine that all of these resins turn into this thick soup that's kind of all become one blend. Like you put the soup in the blender, right? And blended everything up. And it's just kind of turned into this mush of soup. And but with amber and balsams and resins and a little bit smoky, a little bit green. And green as in like a complementary note. Not a green. This is not a green fragrance by any stretch of the imagination. But I think if you kind of smell this and close your eyes, you can imagine there being something slightly green. Or you can imagine there being something maybe slightly floral, slightly tobacco-y, slightly hay-like in the background, a little bit of coumarin, a little bit of tonka bean, you know. Even though there's no tobacco note listed, especially into the dry down, it almost feels like something herbal and tobacco-like starts to kind of join the party somewhere. And, you know, that thick, syrupy labdanum, though, I think really is the star of the show, because it turns into this, you know, labdanum can sometimes feel very leathery and it can feel very smoky. Here it is, you know, a very unique take on amber. I must say, there's a lot of amber fragrances out there. I just mentioned a couple, but I mean, there's so many. Ambre Presso you could add to the list. Some people were saying Grand Soir with this fragrance, although I think this is much better than Grand Soir personally. I think Grand Soir is just a little bit more boring to me. It's more of a boring traditional amber. This does a little bit more on my skin. And, you know, you just get this thick, soupy, I said Ambre soup instead of Ambre Loup, and I keep thinking about this like soupy, goopy amber. But usually when I say thick and goopy, and I have visions of stuff like this, which ends up being too sweet. Fève Delicieuses, I think, is too sweet, personally. Now, I know there are some people out there that love this. Don't take this personally, that I'm not the biggest fan of this. I just think this is a bad example of a tonka bean heavy fragrance. But when you think about the word goopy, this is what comes to mind for me. And not in a good way either. Fève does it in way too sweet for me. And this happens to bring in this goopy quality while also being, while also maintaining its dryness, and it never goes sweet. Somehow they've added this vanilla to the mix that almost smells like a vintage vanilla. You know, it doesn't smell super sweet to my nose. And I like that about it. It's definitely a good amber. The materials smell very high quality to me. The fragrance reminded me, you know, there's a couple fragrances that popped in my head as I was wearing this. The one that I think is probably closest, like the fairest example, is if you've ever smelled Stefan Humbert Lucas's Oud 777. So Armando very kindly sent me, I believe it was Armando. It may have been one of my perfume god people who want to remain anonymous, but I've done a couple blind sniff videos where people sent me some samples, and we're geared up for another one very soon. It's just a matter of when. So they sent me some samples, and I had no clue what they were. They were just labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we had the key later on to figure out what it was. And one of them was that Stefan Humbert Lucas Oud 777, and I said it smelled much more like an amber than an oud. This one is actually called Ambre Loup, but in the opening, I got a lot of oud. But it dries down to the same sort of concept, a heavy amber oud type of combination that reminded me of Oud 777. And I like that one as well. I thought that was potentially full bottle worthy, but the Stefan Humbert Lucas Oud 777 is discontinued. This one you can still go buy. And so a couple other things about this fragrance that are very interesting. So into the dry down, and Robes08 mentioned this in his review as well. He said there's something salty that comes through. And I thought ambergris. And the very first fragrance that comes to mind when I think about amber and ambergris, from what I know about Fragcom, I've never smelled it, but a lot of people compare this to Perfume Roma's Ambre Aurea. I think I have a sample. Someone sent me a sample finally, but I still have never smelled that fragrance. But that's like the reference ambergris fragrance to many people is Perfume Roma's Ambre Aurea. I don't know. I've never smelled that one, but I can say that there is a little bit of this feeling like there's some. This is a very layered fragrance. It's multi-dimensional. There are layers to peel back, and that's what I like about it. Some people think amber fragrances are boring. that they're just, oh, if you've smelled one amber, you've smelled them all. And that's not true. I don't think that's true at all. I think that's just the way the industry has been going with some of these amber fragrances. You know, it feels like there's like this core of fragrances that every house feels like they have to have. They have to have a rose, they have to have an oud, they have to have an amber, they have to have a tobacco, you know, and they all kind of just do the same thing with a very slight twist. This one, the twist is enough where it's different. And I like the fact that there are elements of this fragrance that feel different. Like if you watched my Clandestine Laboratories interview, I actually interviewed Mark Sage, the owner of Clandestine Laboratories, and I did some live streams where I tried Clandestine Laboratories fragrances for the very first time. One of them was called Silver. And Silver was it turned into a very unique amber. I ended up loving it. Like, I think if I bought one from his set, it would be Silver. Or maybe even the Assam, but I want to test it at full strength just because I'm interested. You know, I'm just curious about it. But I really enjoyed Silver. I don't think I've ever smelled an amber that is unique like that. And so there are things out there in the fragrance world that are different and that are unique, but you have to kind of look sometimes. You know, you're not going to hear the mainstream fragrance channels talking about Rania J, most likely. They're usually talking about Dior Sauvage, Versace Eros, and stuff like that, right? And so these are the houses, I think, that appeal more to the fragrance enthusiasts, right? The people that do want something unique and different. And they want something that doesn't just dry down to the same boring aroma chemical that all the other houses are using from the same oil houses, right? And this kind of gives that. Now, if you go to Parfumo and you type in Ambre Loup and you take a look at what they is a similar comparison to, there is a very interesting name on that list that I went, as soon as I saw it, I went, oh, that is a fantastic comparison. So imagine, okay, that you used the highest quality ingredients possible and made an Ambre Loup style fragrance. This is what you would come up with. This is what they compare it to on Parfumo. Russian Oud by Areej Ladore. Now, I am very blessed to have a bottle of this, okay? It is one of my cherished treasures, and this is not the cap that goes with it, actually. Russian Adam sent me a cap from a newer collection to go on this. This is, I think, maybe the second collection. I can't exactly remember. Oh, God. But this is one of my favorite ambers of all time, and it's mixed with oud. And the oud here feels very lava-like, you know, flowing lava. I think if I didn't have this, honestly, I would go for a bottle of Ambre Loup. But since I have a bottle of Russian Oud, I think I'm going to pass on getting a bottle of Ambre Loup. However, I think it's a conversation to kind of have about, it's a conversation in FragCom to have about growing a collection, because everyone's collection is unique. It's like your fingerprint, right? No one has the exact same collection. No one has the exact same collection as you. Once you get past a certain amount of bottles, it's impossible. You're going to go one way or a different way, or grab one bottle different from someone else. Even if you all have very similar tastes, there's going to be points in your collection where you have to make a decision. Do I go spend $150 on a bottle of this, or do I save that money for something else, right? And when your collection grows, you start to realize that you start to get a lot of different types of fragrances, right? And there are some fragrances that some fragrance types that you just love. I have a ton of animalic fragrances. I have a ton of leathers, because that's what speaks to me, right? And I may not have as many freshies or stuff like that. And I have a ton of amber fragrances. That's the thing. I've got 3 11 mLs of Grand Soir. I have a bottle of Ciel de Gum coming on the way very soon, and I have a 10 ml decant of it. I have a 10 ml decant of Ambre Perso. You know, I have two. I actually have. I think I've got 2 of these Ambre Sultan, my favorite amber. But I did a top amber video. You can go check that out. Oh, it's so good. I did a ranked amber. This is not a top 10 video, where I talked about my favorite ambers. I have a ton of amber fragrances is the thing. And so if I didn't have so many, I think this is full bottle worthy. I just feel like with where I'm at in my collection, I don't know if it's worth, you know, grabbing a full bottle of this, if that makes sense, because I would just very easily wear my Ambre Sultan or my Dior Mitzah. And even though they're different, obviously they're going to be different, or my very cherished bottle of Russian Oud, I think I would just wear these and enjoy them. You know, I don't think I need to go spend the money on a bottle of Ambre Loup. But I'm very glad I got to experience it. It has been definitely a blessing to get to know it, do a video on it. You know, now it's in the Rolodex. I can reference it. It's in the old memory bank, and it's a house that has, even though I haven't pulled the trigger on a bottle, they've impressed me. To be fair, Rania J is a house that they have impressed me, and I can't wait to see what the final 6 fragrances here are like. We'll do a live stream, maybe tonight if I can swing it, maybe tomorrow, and we'll test these on skin. I like testing on skin. I think that gives the you know, best impression of the fragrance. So there's Cuir Andalou, Jasmine Kama, Lavande 44, Tea Habanero, Rose Ishkatar, and Musk Moschus. So there's 6 more. So it should be a great time getting to know those. If you have experience with Ambre Loup or, you know, Rania J as a house in general, do let me know. Like I said, I have 0 bottles from the house, but I have enjoyed getting to know Oud Assam and then now Ambre Loup today. Ambre Loup came out in 2012. I think it was the very first fragrance from the house, and it's definitely the most hyped. And then Oud Assam came out in 2013. So, you know, we're talking a decade ago or so. These 2 fragrances came out. So yes, go check out my video of Oud Assam if you're interested in learning more about the house, but I'd love to see your faces in the comments below. Hopefully you guys can join the live stream if I can make that happen tonight. So appreciate everyone watching. Do leave a like and a subscription and all the stuff I'm supposed to say as a YouTuber now. And I try to respond to every single comment. I love the interaction with you guys. So I'd love to hear your feedback on Rania Loup, what you guys think of it, what you make of it, and I hope to see you next time. Cheers. Bye now.